Today we paint our last action hero from the Nemesis board game. Up to this point, I've used either an airbrush, rattle can spray paint, or slap chop to speed paint my hero characters. But for the medic, we're ditching all of that and sticking to just a standard paintbrush. We're still going to add a quick little OSL effect to designate player color, but we're sticking with a standard brush to do it. So let's get started painting the medic for Nemesis Retaliation. And welcome to Trehane Miniatures. Longtime viewers of the channel will undoubtedly recognize this first step. I'm covering the black primer with a beautiful layer of dark plum pro acryl. You'll notice that my airbrush spray booth is set up as the backdrop. That's because I was prepping all of these Nemesis models at once. I called an audible at the last moment with the medic and decided to paint her entirely with a standard paintbrush. The first step for the OSL is a layer of dark hot pink pro acryl. I'm choosing an angle from the upper right side of the miniature where I imagine the pink light source to be emanating. Then I paint the protruding bits and bobs that are facing that direction with hot pink. I'm being careful not to get the hot pink in any of the recesses or downward facing areas. The dark plum represents the shadow color for the OSL and the rest of the model. Rattle can spray paint or an airbrush provides a foundation for the OSL that guides the placement of the paint in the subsequent steps. Here, the hot pink is the foundation, so I need to be more mindful of my placement because there is no guide in place other than my imagination. Next, I use matte white to highlight within the dark hot pink area. I begin with some basic edge highlighting, and as the amount of paint decreases on my brush, I switch to more of a traditional dry brush application. I am not too careful about how I highlight features within the hot pink area, but I am making sure not to hit any of the surrounding dark plum base layer. This is basically what I've done in my half chop videos, where half of the miniature is slap chopped with a single color to simulate OSL. Then I usually highlight with either the appropriate colored speed paint or I use a standard acrylic paint thin to a glaze consistency so that the reflected light looks bright. A simple glaze of fluorescent pink finishes up the OSL effect. Pro acryl fluorescent paints are very translucent, so there is no need to thin this to a glaze consistency. Applying this with a typical layer consistency directly over the white highlights will create the desired pink backlight effect. I even run it a little bit into the surrounding hot pink layer to smooth the transition between colors. This is basically the same series of steps as the rattle can OSL that I used in the previous videos. The only difference is that the hot pink foundation color was applied with a standard brush instead of a rattle can. With the OSL out of the way, we can get to painting for real. Let's rock my favorite fantasy flesh recipe with the Army Painter Elven Flesh and Pro Acryl Dark Plum. There isn't much skin to work with here on the medic miniature with just the face and hands exposed. So while there may be a lot of steps to painting the skin, it doesn't take a lot of time. With the pink OSL coming from the character's right, the natural light has to come from the character's left. I will work to create more natural highlights facing that direction. This means that I will paint more highlights on the left side of the medic's face and I'll make them more intense. This Elven Flesh is the mid-tone color for the skin, so I'll leave plenty of the shadow color showing, particularly on the right side of the character. We are just about done with the medic skin, and all that's left to do is dot in some ice yellow highlights on the left side of the face. I'm going green for the medic's clothing. This begins with a mix of Vallejo light green and dark plum pro acryl. This makes a nice muddy shadow color that will work perfectly as a transition between the pure dark plum and the upcoming light green layer. Moving on to the light green, I focus this on the raised folds and creases in the cloth. I strive for more opacity and coverage on parts that are facing up and to the model's left or our right. I was very deliberate in my color choices for this model. Once I knew that there was going to be pink OSL, I used a very specific source of inspiration for the other two colors in this color scheme. I'll wait until I introduce the third color to see if any of you can guess what that source of inspiration is. Finally, we highlight the clothing by adding ice yellow to the light green. We're going to pick the central part of each fold that is facing up and to the character's left and give it a little highlight. The third and final color in this color scheme is orange. We're jumping straight to clear orange without mixing it with a dark plum first. Vallejo clear orange is so translucent that a single layer will still allow much of the dark plum to show through. But just because we're skipping a step by not having a layer that is a combination of these two colors doesn't mean that we're saving much time. In order to achieve a nice orange color, we'll have to build up the opacity in a few layers. Initially, we'll cover most of the dark plum. With each additional layer, we'll cover a little less area as we build up to a nice opaque orange. This process will leave some nice natural looking shadow colors in place. In addition to the two medical bags, I'm also using this for the medic's hair. As we wrap up these highlights for the medical bags, let's talk about where I got the idea to use pink, green, and orange together. But first, I'll give you a moment to take a few guesses. I'll rule out some possibilities. I didn't get it from real-world uniforms. Don't think superheroes, villains, or nature. Think a little more ridiculous than that. Once I finished with the pink OSL, for some reason, my mind went straight to rainbow sherbet ice cream. The main reason that this is so ridiculous is because everyone knows what a horrible flavor choice rainbow sherbet ice cream is. This character has several small details in the form of medical equipment that we're going to paint all a little differently. First, I'm going to address the glass vials present on her chest and in her right hand. At least, I imagine these to be glass vials. I begin by base coating these with Dark Jade Pro Acryl. For the highlight color, I add a little ice yellow to the Dark Jade, which isn't predictable at all. For these glass vials, particularly the vials on her chest, I'm building the highlights toward the bottom of each vial where light would leave the vial, rather than focusing the highlights near the top where the light would hit the vial. To wrap up these glass vials, I use titanium white Pro Acryl to add small, intense light reflections within the existing highlights. There are so many small details on this model that I've decided to paint all of the metal items with the same blue-black non-metallic metal. With all of these different details present, painting the metal items the same way will keep things from getting overwhelming. There will still be plenty of color variation on the piece. The metal items that we're painting include the encasements for the glass vials that we just painted, the medical equipment in the medic's left hand, her goggles, and the armor plating. We begin with a simple base layer of blue-black Pro Acryl. Iron Wolf Air Color by the Army Painter gets splashed all over the blue-black Pro Acryl. It almost doesn't matter how much of the blue-black gets covered, as long as I keep the Iron Wolf out of the deep recesses. It's still a pretty dark color that is a small step toward the lighter color that we'll use in the next step. Next, we edge highlight every edge with Wolf Gray. I'm going after every edge now because I have one more brighter highlight coming after this, which will be added more sparingly to achieve the final brightness. To achieve the final brightness level, I add a little glacier blue to the metallic items. These are placed on edges only, but not the entire edge. I add this to small sections of upward facing edges to add a little glint of reflected light that makes these metallic pieces shine. Alright, we are so very close to sending the medic out into the field to start saving lives. But first, we need to outfit her with some straps that will keep all of her gear in place as she moves from patient to patient. Finally, we need to get her last two glass items painted. We'll apply deep blue to the lens of her ophthalmoscope and the patient monitor hanging from her left hip. These two items then get a highlight of Vallejo electric blue. For the lens on her head, I'm highlighting in a way that is similar to how I would approach highlighting a crystal type object. I'm concentrating the bright highlights near the bottom of the object where light would exit the glass. Last, I give these two items a subtle highlight of glacier blue. Alright, this medic is ready to join her fellow Marines and whoop some alien arse. I'd like to thank my channel members for so generously supporting my work on these videos. You too can become a channel member for as little as $1.99 per month by using the link in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to join our growing community of lifesavers. The medical kind, not the candy.